It was almost midnight when I came to a hairpin turn on a remote stretch of Highway 57 in South Louisiana. The full moon broke through the leafless trees of late November, illuminating an eerie scene. A lonely breeze blew, making the humid night air seem much colder than the 10-degree temperature. Somewhere in the distance, the cry of a great horned owl pierced the night. At that moment, the incessant flashing lights of 8 special vehicles at the scene of the accident gave first-year Deputy Sheriff U.L. Guillory a headache. The combination of 2 fire engines, 1 search and rescue vehicle, 2 ambulances, and 3 police vehicles seemed excessive for the accident, which occurred on a deserted stretch of Highway 57 south of Dulac, Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana. At first glance, it was a classic case of a driver driving too fast along an old country road, known for its curves and abundance of wild animals, crossing the channel back and forth in search of food. But as a new deputy sheriff, Guillory knew nothing of the sort. He had to learn. There were no sirens blaring or lights flashing as Terrebonne Parish Sheriff Landry Broussard stepped out of his car like a man heading to a dentist's appointment. He knew what awaited him. I've seen this before and wasn't particularly happy about it happening again. Wanting to make a good impression on the chief and overestimating his boss's patience with newcomers, he confidently approached the sheriff. "Looks like some idiot pulled onto the side of the road too fast, Sheriff. Lost control and ended up in a swamp." Broussard managed to squeeze out, "Who the hell are you?" There were over 300 employees in the department, and the sheriff knew many, but not all, of his people. "Excuse me, sir. I'm Guillory's assistant. I've only been working in the department for 6 months." Broussard continued walking. "Well, Guillory, shut up. Keep your eyes and ears open. Maybe you'll learn something, and then you won't be a disgrace to the department." "Yes, sir." The sheriff stopped at the edge of the road where the embankment met the sidewalk and looked down. Directly below him, overturned, lay what appeared to be the charred remains of a late-model Ford F-150. Landry took a Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust Stillwell Star Bayou No. 32 cigar from his pocket, trimmed the end, and lit it with a turbo lighter. He blew out a couple of smoke rings thoughtfully, and then addressed the crew below. "Jacqueline, is that you down there?" "Damn it, Sheriff Broussard. Of course it's me. Who else would work for you for such a crap salary and always do a great job? And how many times must I tell you to call me Jackie, you redneck?" Landry liked 2 things about Detective Jackie Fontenot. First of all, she was right. It always worked great. And secondly, she is one of his 12 nieces. In truth, his favorite. He could always tease her, and she would immediately answer him in kind. "Well, Mon Cupid, what does your instinct tell you?" "Give me 5 more minutes, Sheriff, and I'll crawl out of this dirty, crocodile-infested pit and give you a full report." Sheriff Landry relaxed and waited patiently for Jackie to finish his first inspection of the scene below. He noticed a very nervous Deputy Guillory standing nearby, with his tongue up his ass, but also wanting to make a good impression on his boss. "Relax, Ewell. Now I remember you. I used to run with your Uncle Roch back in the day. Glad to see someone in his family is trying to achieve something." The deputy sheriff smiled and nodded, but wisely continued to remain silent. 30-year-old sheriff's detective Jacqueline Fontenot finally emerged from the wreckage. If she weren't covered from head to toe in a mixture of sweat and swamp mood, she would have been simply stunning. Her long dark hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail that fell neatly from the back of a TSD baseball cap, and her chocolate brown eyes sparkled as she smiled widely. It was clear that she wanted to announce her findings and show her uncle that she could do something, but he never gave her a chance. As she pulled off her dirty overalls and began to speak, Broussard interrupted her. "Let me guess, honey. Assuming the remains weren't too burnt, you found 2 people, a man and a woman, dead less than 6 hours. Both are in a state of undress, which indicates a sexual relationship. If you found documents on them, then they are not husband and wife, but a woman, married. How am I, Macher?" "Not bad." "Well, no matter what, continue. Skid marks on the road indicate that the SUV was not traveling at high speed and did not have time to turn, but was pushed or forced off the road from where it was parked approximately 40 meters back on the highway. Judging by the angle of the tire tracks left on the asphalt, the driver tried to brake and turn to the side, but he failed. He paused briefly, enjoying the cigar and his detective's growing irritation. Landry looked at her inquisitively, but she did not give him the pleasure of answering. Then he continued, "His male organ was severed and may have been in the woman's mouth. If not, it was found on the floor of the car. In short, Detective Fontenot, this was a murder planned and carried out by someone or something who felt betrayed and enraged by the behavior of these two traitors. Questioning friends and relatives will ultimately reveal at least two things. Firstly, this is a love date. The wife left her loving husband into the arms of her lover. As I said, a man could either be married or not, but in any case he was also a cheater, a man who had sexual intercourse with a married woman and did not care at all who suffered as a result of it. Was he wearing a wedding ring? Yes. In this case, it turns out that neither spouse will be convicted of involvement in the crime. Both will have a solid alibi and will be shocked to learn about this event. The same can be said for relatives or friends who may have known about the victim's betrayal of his marital vows. This case will never be solved. Am I guessing right, ma chère?" Jackie did not answer for a moment, rather looked away, as if trying to remember some name or place. When she finally answered, she seemed unable to believe her words. "Pour défendre Félix Bonvillain. Only if you believe in legends, ma chère. And into history," Jackie added. At this moment, the newly minted deputy sheriff succumbed to curiosity and spoke. "Excuse me, sheriff, but what is all this for? Who is Félix Bonvillain, and what is this legend?" "Well, my boy, let me tell you a story. Félix Bonvillain was born just after the end of the Civil War into a wealthy plantation family in our parish. By all accounts, he was hardworking and pious, one of the first and only people to help former slaves. He married his young sweetheart, Marie Schaffer, the beautiful daughter of Thomas Schaffer, another well-known resident of our region. She seemed to fall in love with him and bore him 2 strong sons. However, 15 years after marriage, Félix discovered that his wife was not faithful to him. According to some reports, she dated a local Mazuric named Alphonse Robichaud, who was rumored to have slept with several young wives in 2 or 3 parishes. But his corruption of married representatives of the fairer sex has never been proven. The story goes that Félix, a kind and generous man, did not want to be made a fool of. Therefore, he patiently hatched plans, watched and waited until he found a couple in the back seat of Alphonse's car, naked and passionately indulging in sexual pleasures. In a rage, the offended husband pulled out a saber and deprived Monsieur Robichaud of his genitals, after which he killed both of them and fed them to the swamp. As they say, Félix took revenge, but was never able to recover from the betrayal of his love. They say that he went crazy, left his home, and wandered through the swamp until his death. But, Deputy Galori intervened, what does that have to do with this situation? Even if these two were traitors, Bonvillain has been dead for almost 100 years. At this point, Detective Fontenot took over the case. Yes, but they say that to this day Félix's ghost does not find peace. He roams the roads and gateways of our beloved parish, searching for and punishing everyone who broke their vows and treacherously betrayed their marriage. "This is absurd," answered the naive assistant. "Really, Bullet?" The sheriff objected. "You don't know anything about this story? 1938, Delphine Bordeaux and John Dumont. 1951, Helena Léger and Herbert Comeo. 1984, Sabine Arbor and Aymeric Rivet. 2001, Ursule Patry and Alban Flan. They were all found dead just like our couple tonight," Jackie continued. "Everyone cheated on their spouses and everyone was avenged by the ghost of Félix Bonvillain, a faithful follower of Anthony of Padua. Both the sheriff and the detective crossed themselves. The patron saint of lost loves," concluded Broussard. 4 hours earlier, Babette Babe Sebastien was naked except for her skirt riding up on her hips and her lavender panties hanging loosely over her left ankle. Gus Auten, in turn, gave his best. Babe and Gus had been intimate for more than 6 months, having committed adultery for the first time outside the local high school, where Gus worked as the athletic director and Babe taught 9th grade math. For several months now, they have been having sex behind their spouses' backs and sincerely believe that they will never be caught. The first attempt occurred in the evening when Babe was furious with her husband Luke for not waiting for her to get home before taking the children to the local park. Luke called her on her cell phone several times, but she ignored him, checking her latest work for the week. When she finally listened to his message, she realized that she had failed. "Cher, I took the children to the park. Since there was only an hour left before sunset, we promised them that we would go together, but since you are not answering your calls again, I will lead them alone. Meet me there if you have time. All 3 of us will be glad if you join us." Babe knew she was wrong, but she was a stubborn and proud woman who did not want to be pushed around by her loving husband. Luke, in turn, adored her, perhaps even too much, rarely putting her in her place when she was wrong. As a result, she always found a way to blame him and justify her immature behavior. As she stomped through the empty parking lot to her car, she noticed Gus leaving the gym. He, like all the other heterosexual teachers at the school, secretly lusted after the young mother of 2. She was fit, curvaceous, had a quick mind, and enjoyed making fun of her colleagues. She turned them on, but only to a certain point, until she abandoned them. As Gus approached, he could almost see smoke coming out of her ears as she muttered, "The bastard is trying to make me look bad in front of the kids. No sex with him for a week." Gus, who was no stranger to marital disputes with his fiancée, decided to make his move. Acting like an understanding friend, he persuaded her for about 30 minutes until she climbed into his pickup truck, which he immediately drove to a secluded place behind the school. To his utter delight, they started having sex like rabbits almost immediately after he parked the car. She told him that this was a one-time event, that she was just angry with her husband, and she needed to let off steam. Gus didn't argue or suggest otherwise. He just watched and waited. I knew that once she tried it, she would come back for more. 2 weeks later, his assumption was confirmed. Early one Saturday morning, she appeared in his office. He mentioned that he likes to work without interruption when the school grounds and buildings are empty. When she left, she was afraid that her ass, where he spanked her, would still show his handprints later, so she made a mental note to be careful with how she undressed that evening. Luke didn't notice anything. When she got into bed, it was already dark. From then on, Gus and Babe had sex at least twice a week. The evening of their death was their second session in a week. Gus's wife Nola took the children to her parents' home in Baton Rouge for the weekend. Luke was fishing and Babe's children were with her parents. After the first round, they were both enjoying the second when they both thought they heard a whisper in the dark. "The cheaters must pay. The cheaters must pay. The cheaters must pay." Babe sat up slightly, pressing herself closer to her lover. "What was it?" she whispered. He was silent for a moment, but then smiled lustfully. "Nothing, ma chère, please continue." Babe hesitated for a moment, but then obeyed. And suddenly, this time a little louder, a voice full of poison and rage broke the silence. "Cheaters must pay." Confused and worried, Gus started the car, put it in gear, and was starting to drive away when his voice gained strength. Somehow, without touching the gear shift, the SUV shifted into neutral and lurched forward. Babe tried to scream for Gus to let her go, but she couldn't say anything. Gus, in turn, tried to grab the steering wheel and steer the truck to the side, but his hands were locked and could not move. He frantically tried to move his feet to the brake pedal, but it was all useless. He froze, as if chained hand and foot with chains that held him tightly. "Cheaters must pay! Cheaters must pay! Cheaters must pay!" Now the voice sounded as if it was coming from someone in the cab, but no one or anything was visible, as the SUV, under the influence of some invisible force, was moving closer and closer to the highway embankment. Gus's legs suddenly felt free, and he pressed them as hard as he could into the brake pedal. The SUV's resistance to the invisible force that was moving it made the rubber tires squeal, as if in excruciating pain. They got closer and closer to the cliff and picked up speed, even as Gus tried to block the movement. The last 20 meters were accompanied by the screams of doomed lovers and the incessant eerie sound of rubber on unyielding asphalt. Before the SUV flew to the side of the road, the grinning face of the enraged Pour de Fan Felix Bonvillain appeared before their eyes, and now a disgusting laugh, full of unimaginable pain and boundless glee, burst out with the last words that deceivers will hear in this life. "The cheaters will pay!" The SUV went over a low curb, crashed into the rocks below, and burst into flames. The brazen traitors to love met their terrible and screaming as they were engulfed in flames. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.